Sharon Johnson is the puppeteer creator of Grace and Grins, a puppet company that produces puppet shows that educate, entertain, and spread kindness. Her shows are interactive, tailor-made to each audience, and promote good social and emotional learning practices. I talked to Sharon Johnson about Grace and Grins, her path to puppetry, and much more on this episode of Under the Puppet.
You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. Welcome to the show that is preserving puppetry through the personal stories of professional puppeteers. My name is Grant Pachoco, and this is Under the Puppet.
Well, Sharon Johnson, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here on Under the Puppet. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you because we've never met, and I've had the joy of kind of discovering your work and all the wonderful shows that you put on. And we're going to talk about all those, but I always start by asking, do you remember your first exposure to puppetry, the first time you saw puppets?
First time that I remember seeing puppets, I was probably anywhere between 8 and 10 years old when Sesame Street was on a black and white TV. I remember it was a black and white TV in somebody's kitchen, which was unheard of because back then you didn't have more than one TV in the household. But I just stood there and stared at Ernie and Bert. I even remember which puppets were on there. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. And I wasn't the preschool kid that I was supposed to be for. And I really was captured by the Muppets, you know.
Yeah. That is, well, Sesame Street is an entry point for a lot of puppeteers. That's where they kind of first see it. Did you were you as a when you were a kid, were you a performer? Did you like performing? Did you like creative things?
I did, but I was very shy. Not shy anymore. But when I was growing up, even through high school, I was part of a jazz choir, which was like a select group of kids to be an extra besides just regular choir. I was able to do that, and you had to be good enough to be in there, and it was a lot of fun. But I was very shy, so it took me a while to get in there. That's about it, though. I was just too shy. I wanted to do theater, but I was too shy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I watched my friends be up on stage, and I wanted to be there, but I was too shy.
Well, I kind of feel sometimes that's how some puppeteers are. It's like the puppet can, if you're, because I'm like that sometimes too. It's like I'd rather have the puppet do the talking than me do the talking.
Oh, yeah. And sometimes a puppet says something you can't believe it came out of their mouth. Right. So it's very interesting. You can be as shy as ever and still be able to be a puppeteer.
Yeah. I love it. Were your parents creative at all when you were growing up, or did you have a creative family?
Not my parents. They were busy raising 9 kids.
Wow.
But my brother's very talented. He had a band, and back in the 70s, and he continues even into the age of 70 and beyond as a performer. And he actually made me, I forgot about this. He made me a song that reminded me of when I was a little girl. A song called Peanut Butter and Jelly, It's a Groove. And we always begged him he was a teenager at the time, and all the little sisters would say, oh, please play Peanut Butter and Jelly Groove for us. And he didn't want to, but he would. And and then that always got stuck in my head. And when I was developing a show called All Together Now about visible and invisible disabilities, I asked my brother if he would make that again, that Peanut Butter and Jelly, It's a Groove. So he asked me, what was it about? Can you remember the tune? Can you remember some of the words? So he put it together and made it even better. So now I get to sing Peanut Butter and Jelly, It's a Groove song with Trixie. She stands about up to my chest area, and my feet are her feet. So I put my feet in her feet, and she plays the guitar and sings the song as well as other moving around with the music, other things in the music show I do. But in the All Together Now show, she comes out and sings this All Together Now, Peanut Butter and Jelly, It's a Groove, and how the peanut butter and jelly goes together. And when you work together, it just makes a wonderful thing, like peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome that you brought something from your childhood,
Yeah,
into your shows now. That's really awesome.
yeah. And sometimes I, tell the kids about a little bit about that story and how we brought this. This was an old song that we brought back. So,
Yeah.
but he's talented, and my daughter is a music teacher, or was a music teacher, and she plays all the instruments. So it must have went down to with my daughter, being
Yeah.
musical.
Did you go to university?
I went to a local community college
Hmm.
in Rochester, and I got a human service degree, which I always wanted to help people. And coming out of that, I worked at a group home, eventually managed the group home, and then I got married, had kids, kind of raised them for a while. And then in 1995, when my son was going into kindergarten, I was asked to puppeteer for Kids on the Block, Rochester. And Kids on the Block is a international group. Basically, they offer their scripts and puppets to sometimes mostly nonprofit groups, and that's what we were. And we would get grants, and the director at the time would get grants to buy the puppets. And can you imagine $900 for one puppet back in 1995? She would get all these puppets and all of these wonderful props, and one of them is actually a wheelchair. Man, when I started back up, 3 years ago with Grace and Grins puppet shows, I really wanted that wheelchair. I went onto Facebook Marketplace and got it. For it was like $100, but normally they're $500, and now they're non-existent. Other puppeteers on the Facebook crowd, groups that we have, keep,
Hmm.
where did you get that wheelchair? When they see Josie in the wheelchair, using the wheelchair. And I said, oh, they're really hard to find. They're just not out there now. And I was really excited when I got that. But Kids on the Block was great. I was able to be the director for a few years as well, just booking the shows and promoting it and things like that. But then life changed for me and my best friend, who I became best friends with when we were doing puppetry. And she only lives a mile away from me now, still. And we're still great friends. And we had so much fun puppeteering together.
Yeah, what were those shows like for Kids on the Block? Maybe for people who aren't familiar with it. Like were they,
Yes.
like how long were they, and where would you perform?
Well, Kids on the Block in Kentucky, I believe, they still have one going. I think there's still some going around the country and beyond. But the shows that I was involved in, I did Bullies in School Safety, which is so different now because there's cyberbullying now. That was really very busy show. People wanted to book that one all the time. Another one was Gateway Drugs. It was about marijuana, and now marijuana is allowed. So, but they said that one was more of a gateway drug. So we would talk to the kids about how one of the puppets would have a drug problem. He would just not do well in school, or he was having friendship issues because he was, smoking marijuana, and there was all these conflicts. And during the conversation, now what was great about Kids in the Block puppet shows was not only the style of puppetry, which was the bunraku, which is the Japanese style of puppetry. It means you can see, so you can see the puppeteer at the same time you see the puppets. And I guess for your show, I would be behind the puppet, not under the puppet. The best part about the show is not only the bunraku part of it, was the interactive and educational piece of it, with the social emotional learning practices that the teachers really love and the kids need. It's so funny how when they talk to the puppet, even with Grace and Grins, they will really open up. One of the other shows I was involved in with Kids in the Block was adjusting to divorce, because divorce in this country, it's always been like 50-50. And sometimes the kids in the back of the room, or I can remember this one little girl starting to cry. And then she
Hmm.
shared. And the teacher later came up to us and said, she never opened up like that before. This really helped her. And that felt good. It felt really good. I've had that even happen with Grace and the Grins. I've had a teacher come up to me the next day when I went back to do another I can only do two shows in one day. I went back the next day to set up, and this other teacher came in and said, I have a little boy with an invisible disability, and he saw your show yesterday. It was the All Together Now show. And they said, and he went home and told his parents about it. And he was in fourth grade. So these puppets, are, the older kids like it. And he said he told his mom that he felt really good. and that he didn't feel alone, and that there was other people talking about invisible disabilities, things that people don't see, like Josie in her wheelchair. And that makes it all worth it for all the work
Yeah.
that I do. So
Yeah, that's amazing. What made you, you said you kind of went away from puppetry. What made you want to get back into making these shows?
well, I worked 14 years for the Brain Injury Association of New York State, and in the back of my mind, I always wanted a puppeteer again when I retired. And I ended up retiring early due to life circumstances. I had to leave that job. I acquired another job that didn't work out. It was a nonprofit, another nonprofit, but it just wasn't working out. And every time over my whole life, every time I've interviewed for a job, I always got them. I never was like, sorry you didn't get the job. So it was really weird having like 6 places tell me, sorry, no job for you. And and then I just presented it to my husband. What do you think if I start up a business of my own and do my puppetry? I've always wanted to do it. Let's start it a little earlier. He said, sure, go for it, and we always have each other's back when life event happens like that. And I was really thankful. I said, well, it's going to be a good year before I will even be making any money, and I'll be spending some money,
Yeah.
instead of making any money. And he said, that's okay. And I spent the year getting about 3 shows ready. One I already had ready because I had incorporated puppets into the Brain Injury Association job because I loved it so much. And it was the Noggin Safety Show about bike
Mm.
safety. And so that's one of the shows available with Grace and Grins as well. But that one's not as busy as all the others. Like, I don't think kids are so much into riding their bikes as much as they used to. But I really am glad I brought it back. It makes me happy. My grandkids think it's really cool that grandma's a puppeteer, you know, really having a lot of fun. And the kids, I wanted this generation of kids to enjoy it and have the same effect that the other generation got when I was doing it in the 90s. And to be able to bring it back, the style and just the social emotional aspects of all the different shows that I provide, and the fun shows too, like the music, the Move and Groove musical adventure. That
Yeah.
one's pretty popular, and I made that one for the little preschoolers, the 2 and 3 year olds, right? No, the fourth and fifth grade kids like it too. And so do the adults. I even been to a senior center doing that show, the musical one, and they love it. So puppets for everybody, right?
Yeah, absolutely. What is it about the Boon Raku style that really captivates you and makes you want to, create your shows in that style?
I think it was because it was something that I was already familiar with, and you don't have to go on your knees, and your arm will probably not get as tired. Although, yes, it is very tiring puppeteering. I don't think people realize how much energy and strength it takes to be a puppeteer during the show and just lugging everything around. I think it's because of my familiarity with that. And I
Hmm.
loved having the legs showing, and it made them more like little kids. And I think that resonates really well with the kids watching the show when they see that they're actually walking, jumping around. And even Jack, he'll do flips in the air. And that was a puppet I didn't even know what to do with him, that puppet. But the kids love him. And it just goes to show that sometimes when you think something won't work out, the kids will come up with an idea and I run with it. And every show's different too because of the interactive style.
Yeah. And your first show, if I read this correctly, was Kind Heart. That was the first show that you
Kind
did.
Heart,
Yeah.
yes, and that's very popular still. And
And can
yeah,
you tell
that
us a
one's
little bit
really
about
good.
that show and how it developed?
Yeah, everybody deserves kindness every day. One of the reasons why I named it Grace and Grins, not only one of my puppets is named Grace, but I named it Grace and Grins because everybody needs to smile every day. And grace means forgiveness, kindness, being compassionate, those kinds of things. And so I believe that the title actually kind of led me to the first show, Kind Heart. And then I was trying to develop, because I write all my scripts. Okay, how do I want to present this? I kind of went back to what I was doing with Kids in the Block. And basically there has to be an issue or a problem that someone's trying to solve. And then there's always another puppet that's there to help you along. And then another puppet to, be upset about something. So that's kind of the premise. What happens with Kind Heart Show is that Eddie, who is Josie's best friend, Josie is the girl with the spina bifida who uses the wheelchair. She's upset because he's all mad at her, and she feels terrible about what she did. And she didn't forget to invite him to her birthday party, but she has a sort of small house, and she knew that he was going to be with his dad that weekend, and he never misses that time with his dad. So we kind of put a little information. Oh, he's got a dad. His parents are divorced. But he found out through another kid at school that he wasn't invited. And this kid was like, you didn't get invited. So when he comes out, he's all mad. And the kids get a kick out of it because he comes out and he can't find his helmet, and he slams his roller skates onto the ground, which is actually the table, and says, today is such a bad day. I can't believe, that everything happens to me. And he puts his head on the table and the kids laugh, but he's still upset. But when I go out to introduce the scenes to the kids in between each scene, I say, now he's upset, but he's not mad at you, And so I said, maybe you can help him, figure out what to do to make things work out okay with his best friend Josie. And the kids will come up with the greatest solutions and ideas, and then they might tell him a joke or make him feel better in some way, and then he leaves the scene feeling better because he got to talk it out. And that, so, and then because they helped him, they actually helped Josie too. So there's more to the story, but that's in a gist of what it's about. And in the end, Josie comes out with her wheelchair, and all the kids go, oh, because they've never really seen that. And sometimes they'll ask about her too, like, why are you using a wheelchair? And then she'll tell them why. And they'll answer any questions they have. But sometimes they won't say anything, which kind of makes you think, wow, these kids, it's not something unusual anymore, having a kid using a wheelchair. So that's kind of neat. But she thanks them for helping her. And did you know that when you help someone else, you might be helping when you help someone, you might be helping someone else. And so that's the gist of that show.
Yeah. Well, that's great. You sent me a couple little clips from different shows that you do, and I think you sent me that scene where he gets very upset that he wasn't invited. And what I loved about it too is it's very engaging, but it's also very puppety because you can, like he kind of hits his head, like he's like. What's the old Sesame Street guy, Don Music or whatever, who used to get so frustrated he'd slam his head on the piano, which is very puppety. You know what I mean? Like you can do that with puppets, and I love that because I think we've moved away. It's like, oh, we can't show that to kids because then they'll start hitting their heads on things, and it's like, no, kids are smart enough. That's my opinion of it anyway. But that's what I loved about that clip.
His head down there with his head going back and forth, like, oh wow, woe's me, But but maybe his head did slam a little bit. But they know. And then I have a Jack puppet, the one that flips. That was a kid's idea. Can you do a flip? And he would do a flip, and they go wild. And but yeah, so he. It's funny. Jack will say, "Don't do this at home because if you do, you could get hurt. I'm an expert." And and this is so hopefully that doesn't encourage them to do flips, but I always have Jack say, don't do this at home.
Yeah. Do you build your own puppets or where do you get your puppets from?
Some of them I do build. I've only built the big ones. I rebuilt Trixie from the neck down because I wanted her taller so I could put my feet into her feet and have her dance around. I saw something on Disneyland and somebody had a puppet like that. I said, oh, I got to do one of those. And she's a hit. And she's a little older than the other puppets because she's obviously taller, but she's still friends with them. And I built Inky Dinky Doo, which I don't think I gave you a picture of, but if you go on my Facebook, you'll probably see him. It's on my Oceans of Possibilities show. And he's as tall as me. He's about 5 feet tall, red. He's a North Pacific giant octopus, but he's a kid still, because of his parents. But um, I built him from scratch. I just needed an octopus, and I wanted a big puppet. I thought, it's kind of fun to kind of show the kids. And if the kids are older, they want to know how I made it. And I have them guess, how did I make the legs, touch the legs. And lots of fun. And I did, my last puppet I made probably took me about 100 hours. I would never build puppets to sell because this one took me about 100 hours. Could never sell it for as much time. It's just not worth it. But I had this vision of a flamingo. So I made her, well, with her neck stretched out, she's taller than me, but she moves around and dances. She was a lot of fun to make, and the kids love her. She's lost in the Amazon rainforest and she needs to get home, that kind of thing.
On your website, you mentioned that part of your show is actually you do sort of a show and tell with the puppets. And like you mentioned, you talk about how you made the octopus or whatever. Do you feel that that's an important part of the show is to show off the puppets and the style of puppetry?
Yes, I always share the style of puppetry very quickly, and I ask the kids to learn Japanese, bunraku, and I have them say it back to me. I said, "You just said a Japanese phrase. It means you can see. You can see the puppeteer. The same time you can see the puppet, I'll be right behind the puppet, but after a while, you won't notice me. You'll still see me, but you won't notice me. That's why I wear the veil over my head." And then they forget. And so much so that at the end of the show, they're so into the puppets, and sometimes they think they're really alive because I had this, it has happened more than once. An older kid too, probably 8, 9 years old, came up to me and said, this little girl said, "Miss Sharon, can you get out Josie because I have another question for her?" Isn't that adorable?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think that's kind of a neat thing. And if they're older, they do want to know a little bit more about the puppets, especially the ones I've made. And they are curious as to whether I've made them or not. But I have 3 puppets that are from Pubbets, Pubbets. I bet you James Marshall follows you.
Yes,
He
I have a puppet myself as
A
well.
puppet, yeah,
Yeah.
puppet, and I love them. The way I wish I could duplicate the inside of the mouth where the hand is secure, because when I do it myself, when I build myself, I just don't have that down, very well. So my hand slips. But I just love the way they are built and the way they move. Josie is a puppet, and so is Grumple Snoot, the blue furry guy, the little one. Kids like him too. Actually, I had one kid that was a little nervous about around, and he was little, but I think because he didn't look like a people puppet,
Yeah.
they didn't know what to expect. But
Well, I think that's interesting. That's great too, because some puppeteers, they're like, "Oh, I want to create a show, but I can't build the puppets." And you don't need to build the puppets. You
no,
can purchase puppets to use in your show.
yes, and I prefer that. But sometimes I guess I am creative in that way. I do like to sew and do crafts, so I just had a vision and didn't want to spend $500 or whatever, and I
Right.
spent 50 and got it done in a lot of hours. But I enjoyed myself,
Yeah.
so that was the other benefit of it. But I do like buying them. I have to stop at least for a while. My poor husband gave me a big chunk of his garage, and it's his domain, but he's
Yeah,
childing higher and higher.
I can't go on Etsy. I'll find a million puppets that I want to buy if I go on
Oh,
Etsy.
I know.
Now, you talked about how your shows are interactive.
Mhm.
Are the scripts to your shows, are they set, or do they change over time? Or do they change for situations if you're in different situations?
Yes to both. Sometimes it changes depending upon the age of the children and what they say. And especially when I first start a new script and the first 6 shows or so that I do, it gets tweaked by the kids. I realize, oh, I have to do it this way now, or I have to, change up this. I might get even a teacher might give me some insight, and I thank them for it because I want to make sure it's appropriate, that the kids will get a lot out of it. But yeah, it does. And a script it's funny when I come up with things, I will be doing other things. Uh, a lot of times I'll just be out with my husband. We'll be on the lake with our little sea-doo. And after a while, you look at the same stuff and I'm like, okay, now I'm just riding in the back of the sea-doo. What can I think about? Oh, let's think of a new show. What can be the name? I want it to be about snacking. Crunch and Munch. Crunch and Munch Snack Attack. That's one of my shows. And then like, okay, how can I make it be, fun for the kids and get them thinking about eating healthier snacks? I didn't get into it like real tight, like, I'm no nutritionist, but I know that healthy snacks I know what are not healthy and some that are.
Yeah.
So that one's a lot of fun. I developed a couple songs to go along with the shows too. After my brother, I said, gee, I could probably at least do a tune without the music, and did a Crunch and Munch Snack Attack song at the end with the kids. They like that at the end. Little music.
Yeah. How long does it take you to develop a new show?
Well, my repeat customers love when I get a new show because they have me back. I'm back over and over again. And but it takes a little while, I guess. The Kind Heart show took off really quick. The Jungle show that I just did back this summer is a little slower in getting that going. It's about being more mindful, and it's about a little boy, Marvin. He doesn't want to be in the Amazon rainforest on vacation with his family because he wanted to go to Disney World, and so he can't use his screens. He's not allowed, or they don't have the reception, and he's bored. But his friend, whose family also went on this, she encourages him, and the kids encourage him to enjoy what's around him and learn how to slow down. And then I'm like, how can I teach him how to slow down? Oh, get a sloth out there. So you just sort of like figure out I've got to buy a sloth now,
Yeah.
or something. But sometimes I'll even take a stuffed animal, like I did with my Oceans of Possibility shows. The shark and the dolphin are basically huge stuffed animals that I just made into puppets, and they worked out great.
Yeah. Do you have like a goal of like, oh, I'm, or maybe not a goal is not the right word, but like, do you try to like be like, okay, I'm going to develop one new show each year, or do you just develop kind of when the inspiration strikes?
I think I develop when the inspiration strikes, because sometimes I'll come up with an idea and I'll write it down. In fact, I think I thought of one the other day and I did not write it down, so I don't remember what it was. But I fear that I'll have to buy more puppets if I do another show. But what I need to do is incorporate the puppets I have already, to do another show. It is fun. It is fun to develop new ones.
Yeah.
And it probably like a couple a year is what I've done.
Yeah. And several of your shows, and you mentioned this before, are rooted in
Mhm.
social and emotional learning, SEL practices. Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that and why it's important for you to have that in your shows?
Well, I learned that from Kids in the Block, being on Kids in the Block. And I know the teachers really value the social emotional learning practices that they're always using to get the kids to open up, to get the kids to um, learn how to be more mindful. Actually, when my daughter was a teacher, she said that they really practice mindfulness a lot, and it helped the kids be more calm, less anxious, teaching them, how to breathe, how to take a breath, how to live in the moment so you can just, experience more things around you and be more aware of other people around you, because we're all selfish. We're all self-centered, right? When
Right.
especially when you're younger and your brain is still developing. Um, so that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to bring that in. And kindness would be the social emotional aspect of it. Learning some of those strategies and how to be kind, how to say I'm sorry. You have to swallow your pride when you want to say I'm sorry to someone, or if you've made a mistake, even if you didn't mean to hurt that person's feelings, sometimes you still have to say you're sorry. And I don't know if everybody understands that all the time. And I think it's a good reminder for kids when I come in and do the Kind Heart show and that discussion happens. Depends, like I said, every show is a little different because it depends on what the kids are asking about or commenting on. So it's really really interesting. But I think with the kids' help, these shows get better and better.
Yeah, and well, I always feel as a performer, you get better doing a lot of shows. If you keep the more shows you do, the better perform. I mean, obviously, the better performer you are, but just from a standpoint of, and this can actually lead into another question I was going to ask, but just into a standpoint of, if you do enough shows, like when something goes wrong, it's no big deal. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like
right.
if something falls over, you're just like, yeah, I'll just pick that back up, and
Oh
it's
yeah,
not
that's happened.
instead of
The
going like,
backdrop falls back.
right. Well, that's what I want.
Yeah.
That's what a question I had is like, we've all had these shows, these live performances where something, goes crazy. Do you have a story that you like to tell about a show that went haywire?
Well, I remember back with Kids in the Block, we had a camp table for the stage, and it was wobbly. So sometimes if you got really, energetic with the puppets, and there were sometimes, many times, two puppets on the stage because there was two puppeteers, it would just fold under itself. And the kids, during the show. So usually a teacher would come and help and whatever. But then the puppet says something, some sort of quip that makes everybody laugh. It actually
Yeah.
adds into it a little bit. Kind of woke up or whatever. Kids were kind of bored. But with my show, I'd say I've had more problems with maybe the music, trying to get it to work on my. I almost wish the other day I was just wishing that I could go back to the old times when I used a tape or a
Mhm.
CD and was able to just to press the button or pause it. But with my little screen with my phone and my older eyes, trying to find which music I have to put on next for the next person, especially the music show that I do, can be a little off-putting because it's taking me forever to do or something. It feels like forever to me,
Yeah.
but the kids don't mind. But
I bet a lot of times you're one-handed too, right? Because you got your hand in a
mhm.
puppet, so you're trying to.
Right, right. Or I'll come out in between and I can get it ready and pause it. And if it starts to make an like a trumpet noise, doo, 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 I'll just say, "Oh, Eddie's back there practicing." And it was I just didn't bring him out yet. But the reason why I don't have it behind the screen is because I want Eddie to come out first and talk to the kids and introduce himself and say, "Can you warm up? I want to warm my lips up, and you guys can help you got to warm up your lips before you play the trumpet because you just have to, and so this is what you do." And the kids get a kick out of it, and then he
Yeah.
does the trumpet, so I have to kind of pause and keep him upright and try to find the button and get him to play.
Excellent. Well, I want to talk a little bit about kind of the boring stuff. As a creative person, I know for me this is all the boring stuff. But how is Grace and Grins set up? Is it an LLC? Is it a sole proprietorship? How did you set it up?
Well, I had no idea what to do at first, and I thought, no, I'm going to figure this out. We got the internet now. I set it up as an LLC. I decided not to go nonprofit because that looked even more daunting. So I got it all set up as an LLC. It is considered a I can't even pronounce that word.
Proprietorship? Yeah.
Proprietorship as well. And the taxes aren't too hard as long as I keep track of what I've spent and what I've, brought in. It's funny with the cost. I had a really hard time figuring out the price. I wanted it to be affordable for everybody, but I didn't want to lose money on it. And I didn't want to just break even because, use a little extra money is always nice. So it took me a good year to figure out the right price that people wouldn't balk at. But then I still get, once in a while, I'll get somebody, "Oh, can you come and do this at our child's program?" And then I tell them the price and they're like, "Oh, that's about how much we'll make doing this particular program. And we can't afford that." And like, wow. I mean, then I start thinking, what would she want me to come and do it for nothing? And like, I'll do that at hospitals or,
Mhm.
I'll donate, time and a show for a church or whatever. And I go to walks and I bring my big puppets and I donate my time plenty. But I'm like, no, for a for-profit business, you probably, if you want me to come, you got to realize it's going to be at least something that you have to pay.
Yeah, I know that for all creative people, I think, well, for some creative people, maybe not all, but that figuring out how much to charge is a big mountain to
It's
climb.
really hard. And I think it's
Yeah.
hard for anybody who opens up any business.
Yeah.
My daughter has her own business now and took her a long time. I think people have to realize you have to pay self-employment tax. You have to pay your regular employment tax. You have to pay all the costs, your insurance. I have to buy, a certain amount of insurance and website, all these things. And in the end, I look at it, I'm like, boy, I'm glad I love puppetry because I probably wouldn't be doing this if I really needed money because, you know,
Yeah.
but you do it because you love it and you love the kids. I mean, you do it because you
Yeah.
love the kids.
Well, how do you get most of your bookings? Is it word of mouth? Is it mailings? Do you go to booking conferences? How do you, or is it a combination of all those things?
Well, it's a little bit of a combination of all those things, but mostly for me, it's making the phone calls to the schools and trying to talk to somebody that works on this. Now, the principal is ultimately I found out that was the person you want to talk to. Sometimes it's hard to get in touch with them because they're very busy. So I just keep trying that and librarians and just making the phone calls. And then once I come, they have me come back over and over again, or maybe just once a year. But once you get a baseline of customers, they just keep coming back, which is great.
Yeah.
But it's a whole process and it ebbs and flows depending upon what other things are going on in my life. So if I'm helping someone in my family with a life event, which I actually am doing now, you have to put aside those phone calls you want to make and things like that because you got to focus on this other thing. And I feel blessed that I'll be able to, that I can do that. And I don't have to be, oh, I got to make money, so I can't help you with this. No, of course not. You got to prioritize, what's important.
Do you ever use, because I know sometimes, I guess this may be more libraries than schools, but they'll have
Mhm.
like a theme, you know what I mean? Like it's adventure in reading, or I don't know. That's a lame theme. I think every library has. I'm not
No,
saying
I
it's
got
lame, but anyway, do you ever kind of create a show around a theme that a school or a library might have?
I actually did, and that's how I got into my second year. That's how I got Oceans of Possibilities. Every year, the nation for the libraries, our whole nation decides on a reading theme. And
Hmm.
one year, a few years ago, was Oceans of Possibilities, and I said, let me do something with this. And that's where Inky Dinky Doo, the octopus, came about, and my other whole thing. And the whole setting is in Hawaii, which is where Josie used to live. All my characters too are the same character throughout, depending no matter which show they're in, they're the same character. No confusion there for the kids when they come back, and it helps me out. But yeah, that's how I came about Oceans of Possibilities, and I thought, gee, it could be about anything. So I made it into environmental. Josie comes out, she's wheeling out with this in the sand, and she's got all this fun stuff around her that are, makes it look like they're in the ocean or by the ocean. And then the kids are sitting in the sand listening to Josie because she's talking about bring your water bottle. Don't use those plastic water bottles because the wind kicks up and where does it go? And then it goes into we go into the whole thing about, all the junk in the ocean and everything and how even kids can help with that. And then they get to meet ocean life. So then the waves come up and I come out and set up the second scene and they love it. And the kids have to swim out and I have them put their life jacket on. They have to swim out, never go in the water without an adult. I always say that stuff. And then Daisy Dolphin comes out and she explains a story about how her family adopted a shark. And they're like, whoa. She goes, oh, let me tell you the whole story. So she goes into the whole story, is how she met him and everything. And then they meet Dizzy Shark and he's all nervous. And the reason why he's dizzy because he has vertigo. And but he needs help with catching his food. So that's why he got adopted. Anyway, it's really cute. And then he says, let me go get Inky Dinky Doo for you. And then Inky Dinky comes out, above the waves, and they all go, oh, because he's so big, and then he's kind of full of himself, like he's got his own little, like he thinks he's the greatest, but he sings a song with the kids at the end. It's a lot of fun. But that's where I got the Oceans of Possibility idea, was from the.
One thing I want to ask you about too is your website, because I looked through your website to kind of come up with
Thank
questions
you.
to ask you today, and it's what I love about it is it's very simple in a good way because it just gives the information. There's not a lot of you don't have to hunt for anything. You don't have
My
to like
daughter did that.
okay.
Yeah.
But the other thing I love is you sort of have this frequently asked questions page where if I was going to book your show, I can get basically all the information I need right there. And I love
Mhm.
that I love puppeteers who have shows like you do and go out and perform, who have all that information readily available. You know what I mean? Like, how big a performance space do I need? Do
Hmm.
you have
Hmm.
liability insurance? So, um,
Hmm.
do you find that a lot of people like book you through your website? Because I think it's really set up well.
Yes, I get a lot of emails through the website, and it's very helpful. I think I don't put the price on there because the price can change,
Hmm.
either because of inflation or because I'm having a special. Like right now, I have a special going on. Yes, it's very helpful to have that. And I'm trying to think of. I think I wrote down something else I want to add there. I wrote it down somewhere. I have to do some more work on that. I just wanted to make sure it's clear, so when
Yeah.
they contact me, they already know the basics, and then they can just ask me the cost and if I'm available a certain day. But I'm having a blast. I really am. A lot
Excellent.
of
Yeah,
fun.
no, it was very inspiring because I like right now I'm trying this year, one of my goals is to tour a show that I have a little bit, get it out there. And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I should have all this technical information on the website so people don't have to ask me for it. It's all there." So,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah,
very
that makes it
inspiring.
helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad it helped. And you can, yeah, again, I thank my daughter for that one.
Well, you also have a YouTube channel where you have a lot of videos that give little glimpses of your shows.
Yeah,
Um,
some of them. I'm just getting started on that. It's called Grace and Grins, Kind Heart Puppets, because I want it to be based on a lot of what my shows have been doing, um, about kindness, about understanding and disabilities, and sort of thing. I am just very beginning learning about green screen,
mhm.
and it's a little intimidating, so I kind of have to be in the mood to look into it. But I found some software that I think, and somebody to explain it without them saying it too fast and showing on the screen. Oh, you do this and you click there and then you click this and you click that and there you got it. And I'm like, no, I don't have it. I don't understand. But I finally found somebody that I found on YouTube that's going to hopefully help me understand how to use the YouTube and or use the green screen and the software.
Yeah.
And I want to create much of what I've already created because I'm comfortable with that, and then just kind of go from there and do. It could be 10-minute videos, and I'll have more than one puppet on at times, but they might be talking about their disability, or they might be talking about how they're having trouble at school and this is why, or things like that. So I don't know how it will evolve. It's a whole nother new experience for me, but I'll never give up until my body gives out. I'll never give up doing live shows because that's where it's at for me.
Yeah.
But it is kind of fun to try something new, and I'm hoping that some of the creative aspects of my shows that I do live can be somehow resonate with the kids out in the whole world. It'd be kind of cool if they could learn something from these guys. But I'll have music and dancing and that kind of thing. I'm hoping to get that involved. I don't know if you saw, I did post one thing on my Instagram with my cat. Boy, people love cats. In fact, she's right down here right now, curious as ever. And she just jumped on my lap. Here she is right now. She
Oh,
jumped on my
beautiful.
lap while I was playing around with the green screen. I think it was the day after Christmas. I was playing around with my green screen. That was my Christmas present. And I had Grumple Snoot, that puppet, on, just fooling around with it. And she jumped on my lap, and then I just had him sit on her. And then he started going, "Dun, dun, 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 dun." And I got like over 2,000 views on that one. with with the Instagram, I'm not used to
Yeah.
any of that. I didn't even know how to use Instagram until like maybe 6 months ago. But it's kind of fun seeing it go up, and I'd be like, "Whoa, a lot of people looked at this." Well, I think it was because there's a cat in there too, hashtag cat,
Right.
But it
Yeah.
is fun. People love the animals.
I make sort of my living creating videos for the internet, and I love it when somebody embraces it. So instead of being like, "Well, I don't know how to figure that out. I'm not going to figure that out," you're like, "No, let me figure this out. Let me see how to use this. This could be another tool to get my message out to other people." And I
Yep.
support that 100%.
Yeah, I don't want to be the grandma that doesn't understand how to do these things. I mean, I'm all for learning new things, and the technology is going way too fast for all of us to learn as quick as it's coming out. I love learning new things, and working with the Brain Injury Association all those years, I've learned that use your brain. It really helps you keep you young. And it really is part of brain fitness is learning new things. So,
Yeah.
I think that's probably another reason why I like to do that.
Excellent. Well, if a puppeteer came up to you and said, Sharon, I want to start creating and performing my own puppet shows, what advice would you give them? Like, what piece of advice would you give them to start them on their way?
The first thing is it won't happen overnight, that it's a lot of work. And I would say try not to develop too many different scripts or at one time, maybe one or two. Think higher in the price than you think, but you could always check with other puppeteers what they've done. But it depends on also where you live, what you can, charge. But and that it takes a long. I mean, I'll tell them what I've experienced. Like it took me a year before it really started to take off, and I had to be willing to put a little money into it, not a ton. A little at a time. I was gathering everything I needed. There's so many props and so many things to carry in, and I got this huge, long, big, humongous, collapsible wagon. My husband's like, how can you lift that thing and put it into the car? Well, I needed a new car anyway, but I got a really nice Subaru Outback because of my puppetry. My daughter said to my husband, oh, wow, this puppet business is really costing you guys a lot of money. I said, but I needed a new car. That car I had for 12 years, the other car. But that car wasn't working for me. I could see me hurting my back trying to get in and out of a sedan. So piece of cake with the Outback, getting it in and out. I just used my legs right and everything. But I would tell somebody to please don't think you can't do it, because if you really love it, and don't be afraid to get some how-tos with the puppetry. It's not as easy as what people think. I've seen people loving their puppets, and that's the main thing. But if they really want to perform, they have to learn how to manipulate the puppet. I was lucky in that my friend Katie Cody, who ran Kids on the Block, who actually started Kids on the Block Rochester, she taught me the basics. But she also, I remember her saying, sadly she's passed on, but her saying, Sharon, you're a natural. She told me she didn't have to teach me how to manipulate the mouth at all. I just had to strengthen my arms. But here I was 30, what was I, 39? I don't know how old I was, 35. I think I was, yeah. So she said, you just got to keep your arm up more, because the legs kept going moodily. And I couldn't believe it. At 35, my arm was getting tired after 3 minutes of doing it. But when I did get started, I didn't worry about the puppetry part because I already had that. It was like riding a bike. Once you do it, I went like 14 years without hardly doing it. And I just focused on the scripts. But I'd say surround yourself with people too that really will encourage you, which I had that.
Excellent. Well, I always like to wrap up these interviews by asking, what has been the highlight of your puppetry career so far?
I'd say the highlight is when the teachers come up to me and tell me what I mentioned before, that the show made a difference in one child's life and that made them feel okay with them being different, or disabled. That really made it. I'd say that's a highlight. Even it might not sound like a highlight, but for me, being able to accomplish what I have set out to do and do it, I feel like I was able to do something good. And I think that this new adventure that I'm going on, even though it's a little intimidating, I kind of feel like I was 3 years ago when you're starting something new and you're like, oh, you almost feel like an imposter, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, like, why did Grant ask me to do this? Because I'm not famous. I don't work for Disney or Jim Henson Muppets or anything like that, although I would love to. Who knows where this might go. You know what my dream is? Want to know what that is?
Sure, I would love to know your dream.
This
Yeah.
probably won't happen, but I love going on cruises, and it would be fun just to offer, even if they didn't exchange, me and my husband a free 2-week cruise. At the same time, every day I could go and do 2 shows a day for the kids in the kids area where they could come and gather and watch or be part of a show.
Yeah.
And I would love that. I would think that would be a great thing that I wouldn't have to commit to all the time, but I could maybe a couple times a year go with my husband on a couple-week cruise and play with the puppets at the same time. I wouldn't even want money. Just give us a free, give us free 2-week cruise with food and entertainment, and let me have fun with the kids. And that would be my
well, write that down. Start
fee.
working on it. We're at the beginning
That's
of the
my
year
goal.
right now. Do it. You can absolutely do it. Well,
that's the first time I've actually said that out loud.
Well, now you got to do it. You got my whole audience is pulling for you. Well, I will have a link to your website in the show notes for this, so people want to go check you out, and your YouTube channel as well, and your Instagram and all that kind of stuff. But Sharon, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Oh, well, thank you, Grant. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun, and going down memory lane too. It's a lot of fun.
Many thanks to Sharon Johnson for being on the show. For links to Grace and Grins and some of the other things we discussed, check out the show notes for this episode number 104, over at underthepuppet.com. And if you'd like to hear even more of my talk with Sharon Johnson, it's available to the bonus content and above patrons over at patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Under the Puppet. Speaking of the patrons, I want to send a special thank you out to all the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who've helped make this show possible. Patreon patrons at the producer level and above who get a special shout out are Eve Cunning, Kathy Crawford, Tony Urbano, Brandy, David Akers, Paul, Scott Armstrong, Vicky Sebring, Ricky Chavez, Karina, Jeff Toro, and Lee Thompson. To become a patron, visit patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media, and thank you for your support. If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback about the show, send them via email to underthepuppet@gmail.com, or you can connect with the show on Instagram or Facebook by searching for Under the Puppet. And don't forget to tell a friend about the show. This episode featured music by Dan Ring and was edited by Steven Staver. Thank you so much for listening. Under the Puppet is copyright 2025, Saturday Morning Media, Grant Pachoco, executive producer, all rights reserved. www.saturdaymorningmedia.com.
Under the Puppet proudly presents the Adventures of Timmy the Tooth Reunion. In this almost 90-minute video, you will hear great stories from the cast and crew who brought this amazing puppet show to life. Plus, you'll see never-before-seen artwork and exclusive behind-the-scenes video. Under the Puppet's Timmy the Tooth Reunion is available right now at timmy.underthepuppet.com. You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.